I should have known something was wrong when the sky was too blue that morning. Not a single cloud dared to ruin the aesthetic, like the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for the disaster I didn't see coming. But back then, I was too busy playing my part in the perfect wedding, the kind people gush over in magazines. The dress. Custom Vera Wang, ivory lace hugging every curve like it was made for me. And it was because I'd starved myself for 3 months to fit into it. The venue, a historic ballroom dripping with crystal and roses, because Daniel insisted on old money elegance. The guests, 200 of our closest friends, family and business associates, half of whom I'd met once at a cocktail party but were now grinning at me like we shared secrets. I remember standing in front of the floor-length mirror, my makeup artist dabbing away non-existent flaws, and thinking, this is it. This is the moment I've been sold since I was a little girl. The moment where the ambitious, sharp-edged woman I'd built myself into finally got to soften, just for a day, into a bride. A happy one. God, how stupid that sounds now. Daniel was already at the altar when the orchestra swelled. I could see him from the top of the staircase, his tailored tuxedo fitting him like a second skin, his smile practiced and warm. He looked like the man I'd agreed to marry, charming, polished, just dangerous enough to keep things interesting. My father squeezed my arm, whispered something about how proud he was, and then the doors opened. The gasps were immediate. Not for me, of course, for the spectacle. The flowers, the dress, the way the light hit the champagne tower just right. I floated down the aisle on a wave of approval, my heels sinking slightly into the petal-strewn carpet, and for a heartbeat, I almost believed my own lie. Then I reached Daniel. His hands were clammy when he took mine. I remember that detail now, how his grip was too tight, like he was holding on instead of cherishing. His eyes flickered over my shoulder just once, so fast I'd have missed it if I weren't trained to notice weakness. But I did, and that's when I should have run. Instead, I smiled. I recited my vows. I let him slide a ring onto my finger that felt more like a shackle than a promise. The officiant beamed at us, then turned to the crowd and asked the question that would unravel everything. If anyone here objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. The silence lasted exactly 2 seconds. Then, the screens behind us, the ones meant to play our love story, lit up with a very different kind of story. And just like that, the perfect facade cracked. There's a special kind of silence that only exists in the moment before your life explodes. That split second where the air goes still, where your lungs forget how to breathe, where every nerve in your body tenses like it already knows what's coming. I felt it then, standing at that altar with Daniel's sweaty palm was crushing mine, just as the first flicker of light caught the corner of my eye. The massive screens flanking us, the ones that were supposed to display tasteful childhood photos and romantic vacation snapshots, suddenly glitched to life with something far more intimate. Grainy, unmistakable footage of Daniel tangled in silk sheets, his mouth fused to Serena's neck, her manicured fingers raking through his hair. The angle was deliberate, the lighting cinematic. This wasn't some drunken hookup caught on a phone. This was a production. A collective gasp tore through the crowd, sharp enough to slice through the string quartet's dying notes. Someone dropped a champagne flute. The shatter echoed like a gunshot. My body went numb, but my mind was horrifyingly, viciously clear. I saw every detail with brutal precision, the way Daniel's face drained of colour, the way Serena's favourite diamond bracelet, the one I'd seen her flaunt at Daniel's birthday last year, glinted around her wrist in the footage, the timestamp in the corner 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks after he'd gotten down on one knee in that overpriced restaurant and promised me forever. Daniel's grip on my hands turned desperate. "Eleanor," he choked out, but his voice was drowned out by the sudden roar of whispers spreading through the crowd like wildfire. I wrenched free, my silk gloves slipping in his sweat, and turned just in time to see Serena herself standing near the exit, one hand resting casually on the doorframe, like she was waiting for a cab instead of watching my humiliation unfold. Our eyes met. She didn't smirk, she didn't gloat. That was the worst part. She just looked bored, like this was some tedious errand she'd checked off her list. Then came the photos, one after another, each more damning than the last. Daniel feeding her strawberries in what was clearly his apartment. Our apartment. Serena wearing his shirt, the one I'd bought him for our anniversary. Their bodies pressed against the very same balcony railing where he told me he wanted to start a family. The images kept coming, set to some grotesque parody of a romantic slideshow, and with each new picture another piece of me splintered off. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. Some detached part of my brain marvelled at that, how calm my body remained while my insides turned to ash. My knees didn't buckle, my hands didn't shake. I simply turned back to Daniel, watching as his mouth flapped uselessly, his rehearsed charm finally failing him. That's when I noticed the flicker of movement near the AV booth. A shadow darting away. Someone with access, someone who timed this perfectly. This wasn't just revenge. This was a hit. And as my bouquet hit the floor, petals scattering like broken promises, I made my first clear decision of the day. They'd regret making an enemy out of me. The bridal suite door slammed behind me, with a finality that echoed through my bones. For a moment, I just stood there, back pressed against the wood, staring at the pristine vanity where my makeup artist had fussed over me barely an hour ago. The mirror reflected a stranger. Hair still perfectly pinned, lipstick untouched, eyes hollow as a doll's. Outside, muffled chaos swirled, raised voices, nervous laughter, the occasional burst of hysterical sobbing. My mother, probably. But in here, silence. My phone buzzed incessantly in my beaded clutch. I didn't need to look to know what awaited me. Texts from concerned guests, TMZ alerts, Daniel's pathetic apologies piling up like garbage. Instead, I reached for the half-empty bottle of Dom Perignon, left chilling in a silver bucket, snapped off the cork with my bare hands, and drank straight from the neck. The bubbles burned going down. Good. Then I saw it. The laptop my assistant had left for last-minute speech edits, still open, still connected to the venue's Wi-Fi. My fingers flew across the keyboard before my brain fully caught up. Security footage first. There. In grainy black and white, Serena slipping a USB drive to a pimple-faced catering kid. Then, credit card statements. Daniel's, because of course I had access, showing a $5,000 withdrawal the day before our rehearsal dinner. Finally, a deep dive into Serena's laughably insecure cloud storage, where she'd conveniently archived every vengeful screenshot, every incriminating video, like some narcissistic scrapbook of our destruction. The bottle hit the marble floor with a crash as laughter tore from my throat. Raw, jagged, nothing like the tinkling bridal giggles I'd practiced. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd crumble. But as the champagne seeped into my ruined designer heels, I realised with icy clarity. The game had just begun. Midnight oil burned through my penthouse as I spread the evidence across my glass dining table. Not the romantic one where Daniel and I shared dinners, but the cold, modern one in my home office where deals went to die. The blue light from my laptop cast eerie shadows as I pieced together the digital breadcrumbs, each click of the keyboard louder than the last in the suffocating silence. It started with the catering kid, Jason Miller, 19, a film student working weddings for extra cash. His Venmo showed a suspicious $1,500 deposit from an account named SD Designs the night before my wedding. A quick cross-reference with Serena's business records revealed her side hustle, Serena Michaels Designs. Cute, but amateur. Then came the Wi-Fi logs. The venue's system had been accessed remotely at exactly 3:07 p.m, right during the pre-ceremony champagne toast, using admin credentials that shouldn't have existed. The IP address traced back to a coffee shop 3 blocks from Serena's apartment. She hadn't even bothered with a VPN. But the real masterpiece, the metadata in those photos. I enlarged one of the more damning shots. Daniel's bare back, Serena's smirking face peering over his shoulder. Right click. Properties. There, buried in the code, the camera model, a Canon EOS R5, Serena's favourite. The timestamp, 6:14 p.m. on May 12th, 2 days after Daniel swore he'd ended things, and, most deliciously, the GPS coordinates. They led to the Hawthorne Hotel, Suite 412. A few keystrokes later, I had the reservation details, booked under D. Carlisle, Daniel's middle name and his grandmother's maiden name, his go-to alias for our early dates when he was still married to his first wife. The irony tasted bitter on my tongue. Then, my phone lit up with a notification from my investigator. Got the cousin. You'll love this. Attached was a series of texts between Serena and her tech whiz cousin Liam. The crowning jewel? A voice memo where Serena hissed, "Make sure it plays right when the priest asks about objections. I want her to remember this moment forever." I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking under my weight. All this time I'd thought Daniel was the weak link. But Serena? She'd handed me the knife herself. And now I knew exactly where to plunge it. Revenge works best when it's dressed as karma. Something inevitable, impersonal, as if the universe itself decided to balance the scales. That's why I didn't send Serena's incriminating DMs to the press. I sent them to someone far more dangerous. Catherine Langley, the razor-edged venture capitalist, whose husband's name was still visible in Serena's deleted but not really gone messages. The screenshots were exquisite in their damning simplicity. There was Serena's signature peach-toned nail polish, tapping out flirty emojis on a hotel notepad. The same Ritz-Carlton stationery where Catherine and I had once closed a deal. There was the timestamp, 11:23 p.m. on the night of Catherine's anniversary gala, while she was giving a speech about family values, and there, in glorious 4K resolution, was CEO Andrew Langley's bare shoulder in the background, his telltale navel tattoo peeking above the sheets. I didn't just leak the evidence, I weaponized it. A burner account sent Catherine the files at 3:17 a.m, the exact time her husband's flight landed from his business trip to Miami. By dawn, every board member at Langley Holdings received an anonymous email with 2 attachments, the screenshots and a spreadsheet showing how Andrew had funneled company funds into Serena's boutique. The explosion was instant. By noon, #Langley's Lies was trending. By 2 p.m, Serena's Instagram was flooded with comments like, "Home wrecker tax coming due," and "Does sweatshop labour pay better than side chick gigs?" By 5 p.m, Catherine, who owned 30% of the media conglomerate that sponsored Serena's fashion line, personally cancelled their contract in a press release that included the phrase ethical bankruptcy. But the real masterpiece, the paparazzi shots of Serena fleeing her showroom the next morning, oversized sunglasses slipping down her nose as she nearly tripped over a protester holding a sign that read, "Lux and lace equal sign, stolen wages plus stolen husbands." I'd paid the protester $50, worth every penny. Watching Serena's carefully curated world crumble should have felt satisfying. Instead, it just made me hungrier. Because this wasn't the end. It was the appetizer. Money is the quietest killer. It doesn't scream or throw wine in your face. It just disappears, leaving you stranded in a life you can no longer afford. I learned that lesson at 12, watching my mother count grocery coupons while my father's mistress posted Cartier bracelets on Instagram. Now, it was Serena's turn to understand. Her boutique's financial records were a disaster wrapped in arrogance. Overpriced inventory bought with loans she'd never repay. Unpaid vendor invoices stacked high enough to bury her. And that secret second mortgage she took out to fund her Paris buying trip. The one where Instagram geotags showed her lounging at Café de Flore instead of meeting suppliers. I bought her debt for 30 cents on the dollar from a collector who didn't ask why I wanted it. The call came while she was mid-interview with a damage control PR team. I know because I'd tipped off the photographer outside her office. The footage of her face falling as the lender said immediate foreclosure went viral before she'd even hung up. The eviction notice arrived in a lavender envelope, my personal touch. Inside, a single sheet of paper with the boutique's new ownership papers, signed in my name, and a sticky note. The rent was due the day you crashed my wedding. They found her screaming at the bank manager an hour later, designer heels leaving scuff marks on marble floors. By then, the locks had already been changed. Rain sheeted against my penthouse windows in relentless waves, turning the city lights into smears of gold and neon. The storm had rolled in just as Daniel did, uninvited, dripping with false remorse, his tailored suit clinging to him like a second skin. He'd always loved making an entrance. The intercom buzzed for the 12th time in an hour. His voice crackled through, frayed at the edges. "Eleanor, please, just 5 minutes." I sipped my bourbon, watching security footage of him pacing the lobby below, his reflection fractured in the marble floors. He'd lost weight. The hollows under his eyes told me he wasn't sleeping. When I finally swiped the elevator access, it wasn't mercy. It was curiosity. He smelled like airport whiskey and regret when the doors opened. His knuckles were raw, probably from pounding on Serena's door when she stopped taking his calls. "She played me too," he blurted before I could speak, hands outstretched like a penitent sinner. "She recorded everything, threatened to send it to my partners if I didn't leave you at the altar. I was going to warn you, but you're a coward." My laugh was a razor dragged across glass. "Funny how that didn't stop you from fucking her in our bed." The SEC documents sat in plain view on my console table. I'd highlighted his more creative accounting, the offshore transfers, the insider trades timed to pharmaceutical mergers. He paled when he saw them. "You wouldn't." I tapped my nails against the bourbon glass. "Already did." His collapse was almost beautiful. The way his knees hit my hardwood, the shuddering breath before the tears came. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back, letting his fingers graze empty air. "I'll resign," he choked. "I'll give you the house, the accounts." "I don't want your scraps." I tossed him a tissue from the box on the counter. "I want you to sit in that federal interrogation room and explain why your mistress's boutique got $200K from your consulting firm." The elevator dinged on cue. Right as 2 agents stepped into my foyer, badges glinting, Daniel's head snapped up, wild-eyed. "You set me up?" I toasted him with my glass. "No, darling, you did that all by yourself." As they cuffed him, I noticed the monogram on his shirt cuff, the one I'd bought him. Some habits die hard. I made a mental note to burn the rest of his things. There's a particular kind of unravelling that happens when someone used to silk sheets finds themselves sleeping in a motel with flickering neon lights, bleeding through thin curtains. I should know. I booked the room for her. The Grand Star Motel wasn't grand, and its Lone Star had burned out years ago. But it was the only place that would take cash without ID after Serena's credit cards got declined at the Hilton. I knew she'd end up there because I'd made sure of it, calling every decent hotel within 20 miles to quietly suggest they might want to check their no-guest lists. Security footage from the lobby showed her arriving past midnight, oversized sunglasses still on despite the hour, her once pristine Valentina tote now stuffed with whatever she'd grabbed before the eviction. The clerk handed her a key with a smirk. "Room 17. The one with the broken AC and the lingering smell of cigarette smoke." I watched the live feed as she threw her bag on the stained bedspread, her reflection warped in the cracked mirror as she scrolled through her phone. Notifications must have been pouring in. Her Instagram was a graveyard of deleted posts, her Twitter flooded with memes comparing her to various reality TV villains. But the real masterpiece was the email from her landlord, which I'd forwarded to her with the subject line, "Remember when you said karma wasn't real?" By 3 a.m, she was pacing, her phone pressed to her ear. Voicemails to Daniel went unanswered. Calls to her cousin Liam were declined. Even her so-called friends had ghosted her. The only person who picked up was a taxi dispatcher who informed her no cars were available at this hour. Then came the breaking point. A news alert flashed on her screen. Lux and Lace assets seized in labour scandal. The accompanying photo showed workers from the factory she'd sworn she didn't use, holding up pay stubs with her forged signature. Her hand shook so badly she dropped the phone. The camera caught the exact moment she realised she was alone. Truly alone. No Daniel to cry to, no boutique to hide behind, no money to buy her way out. Just her, a sagging mattress, and the slow, suffocating understanding that this was only the beginning. I closed the feed and poured myself a drink. The best part? She still had no idea I was behind it. Not yet. Bank accounts don't lie. Neither do offshore transfers, especially when they're funneled through shell companies with all the subtlety of a fireworks display. Serena's desperate bid to salvage what was left of her fortune had led her straight into my favourite kind of trap, the kind she built herself. Her secret Cayman Islands account, opened under her grandmother's maiden name, had seemed like the perfect escape hatch, until I found the paper trail linking it to Daniel's embezzled funds. $2 million, withdrawn in increments, just small enough to avoid scrutiny. A fortune built on fraud tucked away for a rainy day. I could have exposed her, sent the records to prosecutors, let her rot in a cell next to Daniel, but that would have been too easy. Instead, I wired every last cent to the Brides Against Betrayal Foundation, a charity for women left at the altar, funded entirely by divorce settlements. The donation receipt arrived in Serena's inbox within minutes, the subject line gloating, "Your legacy, courtesy of the wedding you ruined." The cherry on top, the press release announcing the generous anonymous gift, quoting the foundation's director, gushing about how this would help so many women rebuild their lives. Serena's scream when she saw the news was probably loud enough to shake the walls of her motel room, but no one was around to hear it. Just like no one had been around to hear mine. Karma's a bitch, but I'm a far better one. 6 months after the wedding that never was, the brass plaque on my office door gleamed with fresh engraving. Phoenix strategies, crisis management, and reputation restoration. The irony wasn't lost on me, the queen of scorched earth now offering to put out fires. Business was booming. Catherine Langley became my first client, her manicured finger tapping the contract as she said what everyone was thinking. You don't just clean up messes, you invent new ways to destroy the people who made them. Her retainer check could have bought Serena's entire bankrupt boutique twice over. The office smelled of espresso and ambition, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the skyline I'd once imagined sharing with Daniel. Now I owned the view alone. My team, a carefully curated collection of hackers, journalists, and ex-law enforcement who asked zero questions, worked in sleek pods, dismantling lives with the precision of surgeons. The media called us the redemption firm. Our clients called us miracles. I kept one framed article on my desk, from Jilted Bride to Power Broker, how Elena Vasquez built an empire from ashes. The photo showed me in Alexander McQueen, standing where Daniel's trading firm used to be, now a juice bar ironically called Fresh Start. Serena's mugshot arrived in my inbox that morning, attached to a plea from her public defender. I marked it as spam. The intercom buzzed. "Miss Vasquez, your 3 o'clock is here, the senator's wife?" I straightened the jade figurine on my desk, a phoenix, wings spread. Send her in. As the door opened, I smiled. The game hadn't ended. It had just leveled up. The envelope arrived on the anniversary of the wedding that never happened, its ivory linen paper out of place among the usual corporate correspondence. My assistant hesitated before placing it on my desk. She'd been with me since the beginning, one of the few who knew the whole story. The return address was a P.O. box, but I didn't need to open it to know whose shaky handwriting curled across the surface like a dying vine. Inside, a single sheet of hotel stationery, the cheap kind that leaves fibres on your fingertips. The scent of drugstore perfume clung to it, something cloying and desperate. "I know what you did," it began, the ink smudged in places that might have been from tears or spilled vodka. "But I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to explain." As if explanations could unruin lives, I almost tossed it straight into the shredder. Almost. Then, my finger caught on the photo tucked behind the letter. A Polaroid of Serena standing outside my old apartment building, taken months before the wedding. The timestamp proved it was the same day Daniel had cancelled our dinner, claiming a last-minute business trip. She'd written on the white border, in red pen, "He was mine first." My laughter startled the assistant lingering by the door. That evening, I had the photo framed in shadow box, alongside other mementos from my rise. Daniel's arrest clipping, the foreclosure notice for Serena's boutique, a shard of glass from the champagne flute I'd shattered the night I decided to burn their lives down. The collection now had pride of place in my office lobby, labelled "Client Testimonials." The letter itself met a more poetic fate. I fed it, slow inch by slow inch, into the flame of the candle I'd lit at midnight, the same hour Serena had destroyed me. The paper curled black at the edges, her pleas turning to ash before they could even finish. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Meeting, Langley Media, 9 a.m. I blew out the candle, watching the last wisp of smoke dissolve into nothing. Some ghosts just don't know when to stop haunting. Lucky for me, I specialise in exorcisms. The gala was everything my wedding should have been. Crystal chandeliers dripping light onto a sea of the city's most powerful faces. A string quartet playing something haunting and expensive. And me, in a blood-red gown that made photographers trip over their own feet. The Women in Business Foundation had chosen me as their Phoenix of the Year, an honour usually reserved for CEOs twice my age. The irony tasted better than the champagne. I stood at the podium, the weight of the microphone familiar in my hand. Flashbulbs popped like distant fireworks as I adjusted my notes. Not that I needed them. Every word of this speech had been etched into my bones the moment Serena's images flashed across those screens. "People ask how I rebuilt," I began, pausing just long enough to let the room lean in. But the truth is, I didn't. Rebuilding implies starting over. A knowing murmur rippled through the crowd. I took the wreckage and forged something sharper. The reporter from the Times, the one who'd covered my scandal with barely concealed glee, raised her hand during Honda. "Do you ever think about the people you left behind?" Her tone suggested she meant Daniel's prison transfer request, or Serena's recent job washing dishes at a truck stop diner. I tilted my head, letting the silence stretch until it became its own answer. Then, with a smile honed to lethal precision, "I think about them exactly as often as they thought about me when they made their choices." The crowd erupted in applause that shook the silverware. Later, as the valet brought around my Aston Martin, black like my wedding would have been had I planned it myself, a paparazzo shouted from the curb, "Still think revenge isn't sweet, Vasquez?" I slid into the driver's seat, pausing just long enough to meet his lens. "Darling," I purred, "this wasn't revenge." The engine roared to life beneath me. This was a lesson. The tyres screeched as I pulled away, leaving behind the lights, the whispers, the ghosts of who I used to be. Somewhere in the night, a neon sign flickered over a diner window, illuminating a haggard face staring at my cover story on a magazine rack. But I didn't look back. Victory, after all, is best enjoyed moving forward,